You know that little voice, the one that photography gurus drill into you? Always shooting raw. Always.
Oh yeah, it's practically dogma, isn't it?
But have you ever actually stopped and thought, is this always the best way? I mean, maybe you secretly, prefer how your JPEGs look right out of the camera.
It happens. People definitely feel that way sometimes.
Okay, so let's unpack this properly because today we're doing a deep dive into the whole RAW versus JPEG thing in digital photography.
And we'll touch on that newer option too, compressed raw.
Hmm.
It's getting popular.
Exactly. Our mission here is to really get you comfortable with the differences, the pros, the cons, so you can make smart choices for how you shoot.
And we're drawing heavily on insights from Simon d'Entremont. He's a pro nature and wildlife photographer, specifically from his video, Is Raw Better? You may be surprised.
Right. Because as he points out, it's not really a simple yes or no answer, is it?
Not at all. It really depends on what you're doing, your workflow, all that stuff.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What is a RAW file, fundamentally?
Well, think of it as uh, the raw, unprocessed data straight from your camera's sensor.
Like a digital negative. I hear that analogy a lot.
That's a really good way to put it, yeah. All the original information is there. Nothing's been baked in aesthetically.
So if it's the original, why can't I just, double click it and see the photo?
That's the key thing. Because it is raw data, your computer or phone doesn't natively know how to display it. You need specific software.
Like Adobe Lightroom, which Simon mentioned.
Exactly, or similar programs. They decode that sensor data and turn it into an image you can see. And because it holds all that information,
They're big files.
they tend to be significantly larger than JPEGs, yeah.
Okay. Digital negative, needs developing, takes up more space.
Got it. Now, JPEG, the one that often looks great right away.
Right. JPEG is, well, it's a different beast entirely. It's processed and, importantly, it's compressed.
Process how? What's the camera actually doing?
It's applying what Simon calls beauty adjustments. Things like boosting contrast, maybe saturation, adding some sharpness, reducing noise. So that's why they can look so punchy straight out of the camera. The camera's doing a quick edit.
Precisely. It's aiming for a generally pleasing look.
Can you control those adjustments, though, in the camera?
Oh, absolutely. That's where things like picture styles on Canon come in, or picture control on Nikon, film simulation on Fuji, picture profiles on Sony.
Yeah.
Different names, same idea.
Okay, so you can tweak the look of the JPEG before you even take the shot, like make it more vivid for landscapes or something?
Exactly. You tailor the JPEG processing. And this is crucial, those settings only affect the JPEG.
They don't touch the RAW file at all.
Nope. The raw file remains that pure, unaltered sensor data. And actually, Simon points out something interesting.
Yeah.
Even when you're shooting only in RAW mode, the preview image you see on your camera's little screen, that's actually a JPEG preview.
No way. So it's showing you a processed version even if you're saving the raw data.
Often based on whatever picture style or equivalent you have selected. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sneaky.
Huh. Okay, so JPEGs are processed and compressed. We get the processing part. Let's talk compression. It's not just like finding identical colors and ditching them, is it?
Oh, no, it's much smarter than that.
Yeah.
JPEG compression uses a pretty sophisticated mathematical algorithm. It's actually based on sort of human visual psychology.
How so?
Well, it knows our eyes are more sensitive to changes in brightness, luminance, than they are to subtle shifts in color or chroma. And we don't notice detail as much in blurry areas.
Okay.
So the algorithm prioritizes keeping the brightness information accurate, and is a bit less fussy about the color details, especially in complex areas. It throws away data, it calculates, we're less likely to notice.
Which makes the file much smaller.
Exactly, often dramatically smaller,
Yeah.
while still looking pretty good to our eyes for most everyday purposes.
Right. Okay. Fundamentals covered. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Image quality. Bit depth is a big one. RAWs have much higher bit depth, right? Why does that matter practically?
Yeah, think of bit depth as the number of colors or tones available. Simon mentions his Canon R5. In 14-bit RAW mode, captures something like 4 trillion possible color values.
4 trillion. Wow. And a JPEG.
A standard JPEG is 8-bit. That gives you around 16 million colors.
Okay, 16 million sounds like a lot, but compared to 4 trillion, it's tiny. Where would I actually see that difference?
A classic example is smooth gradients. Think of a sunset sky transitioning from orange to blue. With only 16 million colors in an 8-bit JPEG, you might start seeing visible steps or bands in that smooth transition.
Banding. Yeah, I've seen that.
Especially if you try to push the image in editing, like adjusting the brightness or contrast heavily. You run out of intermediate shades in the JPEG. Simon's Photoshop gradient example shows this really clearly in theory.
Like trying to paint smooth color with only a few crowns.
That's a great analogy, and this bit depth difference is also huge when you're dealing with difficult light.
You mean like really bright highlights and deep shadows in the same shot?
Exactly. Simon shows examples where, with a RAW file, you can pull back a ton of detail from an overexposed sky or lift information out of dark shadows. That detail simply wasn't recorded in the 8-bit JPEG, or at least not with the same subtlety. It gets clipped to pure white or pure black much sooner.
Right. I've definitely had JPEGs where the sky just goes completely white and there's nothing you can do.
hmm Now, Simon does give credit where it's due. He notes that modern JPEGs are getting better, and they can often handle maybe 1 or 2 stops of shadow recovery surprisingly well.
Okay, so minor tweaks might be all right.
Yeah, but for significant recovery in those really contrasty scenes, RAW still has a massive advantage because of that extra bit depth.
What about white balance? That's another setting that can sometimes go wrong in the moment.
White balance is another win for RAW. Because the file is unprocessed, the white balance setting you chose in camera is more like .metadata. It's an instruction for the software.
So you can just change it later without penalty.
Pretty much, yeah. In your RAW editor, you can adjust the white balance completely, make it warmer, cooler, whatever, and you're not degrading the image quality.
Mhm.
If you shot under tungsten lights but had it set to daylight, it's usually a one-click fix in RAW.
Wow. I've definitely messed that up before. That sounds like a lifesaver.
It really can be. With a JPEG, that white balance color interpretation is baked in during the in-camera processing.
So trying to fix it later is harder.
Much harder, and often with poor results. If you try to make a big white balance shift on a JPEG, you can easily end up with weird color casts or artifacts because you're stretching that limited 8-bit color information. Simon's example of fixing a bad white balance RAW photo instantly really drives this home.
Okay, so RAW definitely seems to win on image quality and editing headroom. But practicality. Let's talk file size. Simon mentioned, what, 53 MB for a RAW versus 14 MB for a JPEG? That's huge.
It really is. Nearly 4 times the size in that example.
Yeah.
And that adds up incredibly quickly, especially if you shoot a lot.
And think about backups. Simon recommends 3 copies, 2 local, 1 cloud. That storage costs balloons with RAW files, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The cost of hard drives, SSDs, cloud storage, it becomes a significant factor.
So, I mean, if someone saves a chunk of money by shooting JPEG, could that actually help their photography in other ways, like freeing up cash for a better lens or maybe a trip?
That's a really interesting angle. Yes, potentially. The savings on storage could absolutely be redirected towards gear that has a direct impact on image creation, or towards experiences like travel or workshops. It's not just about the file itself, but the whole photographic ecosystem.
That's a smart way to look at it. Beyond storage, what about speed? Like shooting speed.
Another big practical difference, those big RAW files take longer for the camera's processor to handle and write to the memory card.
So the camera can get bogged down.
Exactly. When you're shooting bursts, like for sports or wildlife, the camera's internal buffer memory fills up much faster with RAW files. Once it's full, your frame rate drops dramatically, or even stops until it clears.
Ah, so you might miss the peak action moment because the camera is choking on RAW files.
It's a real possibility. JPEGs, being much smaller, write faster, allowing the camera to sustain those high-speed bursts for much longer.
So for action stuff, JPEG might actually be the better choice in the moment just to get the shot.
In many cases, yes. If you don't anticipate needing extreme edits later, the ability to keep firing away can be more valuable than the extra flexibility of RAW.
And then there's just workflow. JPEGs are just easy, aren't they?
Undeniably. They come out of the camera looking decent, usually, and they're ready to go.
You can text them, email them, upload them straight away.
Right. They're universally compatible. Your phone, your tablet, your computer, your grandma's digital photo frame, they all understand JPEG. This is massive if you need speed. Think event photography, news reporting.
Or Simon's hot air balloon example, needing to send photos quickly.
Exactly. Shoot JPEG, transmit instantly. RAW files, on the other hand.
They need that extra step. You have to process them.
You do. You need to import them into software like Lightroom or Capture One, make your adjustments, even basic ones, and then export them as a JPEG or TIFF to actually share or print them.
Which takes time, and you need the software.
It adds a whole stage to your workflow, which is fine if you have the time and setup, but not always practical.
Okay, so we've got pros and cons stacking up on both sides. Based on Simon's take, how do we boil it down? When should you really reach for RAW?
Simon suggests RAW is the way to go. If you absolutely need the best possible dynamic range, if you want maximum flexibility for post-processing, if ultimate image quality and color fidelity are your top priorities.
And if storage isn't a big issue, presumably?
Right? And you need the software and the workflow allows for that processing time.
And JPEG. When is that the smarter call?
JPEG shines when speed and simplicity are key,
Mm.
when you need a quick turnaround. If you prefer minimal processing or maybe don't even have RAW software.
Or if ultimate quality isn't the main goal for that particular shot.
Exactly. Or if you're tight on memory card space or storage. Or, crucially, if you need that faster burst shooting for action.
It really does sound like it's very situation dependent. No single right answer.
That's the core message.
But then there's this new kid on the block, as Simon put it, compressed RAW. What's the deal there?
Compressed RAW is trying to be a bit of a halfway house. It keeps the original image dimensions, and importantly, it's still unprocessed sensor data.
Like a regular RAW file in that sense.
Yes, but it uses some form of compression, usually lossless or visually lossless, to reduce the file size.
So smaller than uncompressed RAW, but bigger than JPEG.
Typically, yes. Simon's example was around 30 millibit for compressed RAW compared to 53 millibit uncompressed and 14 millibit JPEG. So a noticeable saving over standard RAW.
Okay, saving space is good, still keeping the raw data. But is there a catch? Is the image quality compromised by the compression?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer seems to be surprisingly little for most people. Yeah. Different brands do it slightly differently. Nikon might offer 12-bit compressed. Sony has a compressed 13-bit. Canon has SRAW, which is 12-bit with the electronic shutter. But when Simon compared his Canon R5's uncompressed RAW to its compressed RAW, SRAW,
What did she find?
even when he pushed the files hard, really pulling back highlights, lifting shadows, pixel peeping at high magnification, he found it incredibly difficult to see any meaningful difference.
Wow. So even for fussy photographers.
He suggests that for the vast majority of users, even quite discerning ones, compressed RAW is a very, very viable alternative. Unless you're doing absolutely extreme crops or dynamic range pushes or maybe incredibly fine-grained retouching, you're unlikely to notice the difference.
That is fascinating. It sounds like compressed RAW might actually be the sweet spot for a lot of photographers.
It certainly offers a compelling balance.
What about Simon himself? He's a pro, shoots nature and wildlife. He said he mainly shoots RAW, right? Uncompressed RAW.
Yes, primarily uncompressed RAW. For him, it comes down to his specific needs. He often crops heavily.
Need all the data possible for that.
Exactly. He also processes meticulously for prints, where every bit of quality counts. And he's often shooting in challenging light where maximum dynamic range is crucial. Plus, he has the storage and the computer power to handle it.
Makes sense. But even he admitted there are times when compressed RAW or even JPEG would make sense for him.
Absolutely. He gave that great example of being on safari, limited memory cards, amazing wildlife happening.
Yeah.
He said in that situation, if switching to compressed RAW or even JPEG meant he could keep shooting and capture way more photos, he'd do it in a heartbeat.
Because getting the shot is the most important thing.
Precisely. He had that great line, something like, photos that are 96 or 98% of what a RAW offers are still better than no photos at all.
That's such a practical, grounded take. I like that. It also suggests maybe JPEG's reputation is just, the inferior option is a bit outdated.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Sensor technology has improved so much, the dynamic range captured even in JPEGs from modern cameras is way better than it used to be.
So they're more robust now.
They are. And Simon emphasizes there are totally valid reasons for pros to shoot JPEG, usually boiling down to workflow speed and quick delivery needs.
If someone does decide to shoot JPEG, what's the key advice for getting the best results, according to Simon?
He stressed a few things. One, nail your picture profile or equivalent in camera to get the look you want from the start.
Oh.
Two, get your white balance right or as close as possible when shooting.
Because it's harder to fix later.
Much harder. And three, be really careful with your exposure. Use your histogram. JPEGs have less latitude for fixing over or underexposure compared to RAW.
Good advice. What about shooting both? RAW plus JPEG.
That's always an option on most cameras. You get the instant gratification and shareability of the JPEG, plus the full flexibility of the RAW file stored away for later if you need it for serious editing or a big print.
Downside is just memory usage, right? Eating up space even faster.
Exactly. It essentially doubles the storage needed per shot. But for some workflows, that trade-off makes sense.
So when you boil it all down, the file format you choose, it's not what makes you a good photographer, is it?
Not at all. Simon makes that point clearly. Getting better at photography is about practice, learning composition, understanding light, mastering exposure, the fundamentals. The file format is just a choice about how you capture and handle the data.
It's a tool, not the skill itself.
Perfectly put.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. What's the big takeaway from this deep dive into RAW versus JPEG?
I think the main thing is there's no single best. Both RAW and JPEG have clear strengths and weaknesses. The right choice really depends on your needs, what you're shooting, how you like to work, your storage situation.
And compressed RAW is definitely worth considering as a middle ground.
Absolutely. It seems to hit a sweet spot for many, offering most of the benefits of RAW with smaller file sizes.
So if I'm heading out to shoot next week, what should I be asking myself to decide which format to use for that specific shoot?
Think about, what's my main goal for these images? Do I expect to do heavy editing? How quickly do I need them? Am I going to be shooting fast action? How much space do I have on my cards and hard drives?
Answering those questions should point you in the right direction.
Exactly. It helps you align the format choice with your actual priorities for that session.
That really clarifies things. It's less about a fixed rule and more about a conscious choice each time. Okay, final thought then. Now that you understand a bit more about what's happening under the hood with these formats, how might that change how you approach your next photo shoot? What creative doors might that open up for you, knowing the possibilities and the limitations? Something to think about.